Hi, I'm attorney and financial strategist J.J. Childers, and welcome to the Real Wealth Rescue System. This program was designed to help people to escape from what I refer to as the artificial wealth trap. The entire program is designed to increase the knowledge of people when it comes to an area that can be extremely frustrating and quite confusing, their finances. Today, people find themselves deeper in debt than ever before. The real estate and stock markets are in a state of turmoil. Unemployment is up, and the cost of just getting by seems to keep getting higher and higher all the time. With bankruptcies and foreclosures at an all-time high, it's hard to make sense of things and find answers to our financial questions. Well, I want to change all that by providing people with the education that is so badly needed. Through this Real Wealth Rescue System series, we outline a program for escaping the artificial wealth trap that can help people just like you. Be sure to have a pen and paper handy so that you can take notes as we do our part in restoring the American dream. Thanks for watching.
JJ, you and I have talked in the past about a lot of things involving wealth management and asset protection, and I know we've talked about this artificial wealth trap that a lot of people, can find themselves in at times. That you've got some strategies that you're discussing that you use in an acronym, a 6-part series called E.S.C.A.P.E, E.S.C.A.P.E. Tell me a little bit about this E.S.C.A.P.E plan and what all it entails.
Really, we talk about that concept of the artificial wealth trap. And as we talked about in our previous discussion, society is essentially trapping us to fall prey to this whole concept of artificial wealth, where people truly aren't wealthy, but they're just living a lifestyle of being wealthy. That's great while you're doing it. Unfortunately, it catches up with you. So what I've done is I've put together the overall concept of how to escape the trap, and I've utilized an acronym of E.S.C.A.P.E to kind of break it into the 6 core parts that make up the overall wealth escape plan. And on this one, I want to talk specifically about the first letter in that ESCAPE acronym, and that's the E. That E is for Envision. And really, a lot of times people don't understand what Envision is all about. So I kind of tell them that if you can't picture yourself in a place where you're out of this trap, you're never going to get out.
Now, when you're talking about the trap, are you talking about people who are trapped in debt, people who are trapped in not living out their dreams, or some other types of traps too?
Really, all of those. And the reason I say that is that sometimes I've worked with people who aren't even in any debt. They have 0 debt. However, all of a sudden, they've trapped themselves into a lifestyle where they're paying for things on an ongoing basis, where maybe it's a country club membership. Maybe it's just continuous payments that they're having to make that they've tied themselves into that they don't know how to get out. And everything's fine as long as they're generating this income, but now all of a sudden it's time for them to retire. And what they realize is they don't have the money to basically leave their jobs. And in some instances, they want to retire. Some instances, they have to retire because they're getting to a certain age. We've got to make sure that you prepare yourselves for the long run. People are so focused on the here and now and making sure that they're able to provide the type of life they want for themselves, but they're doing it on credit. As they're borrowing the money, they're also living on borrowed time.
Well, now you're talking about this, and it sounds like you're speaking to an older audience, a more mature audience, somebody approaching retirement age, perhaps. Do these same lessons, does this need to be something that you start younger in life?
That's really why I put this whole thing together, because I see people who are maybe getting closer to the retirement years, and they say, I wish I'd known. If I knew then what I know now, I would have done things differently. Unfortunately, you can't go back in time and change things. What we can do is try to get the word out, get the message out, let people know, because what's happening now is that people are digging themselves very deep holes from a very early age. It's gotten to the point now that it used to be where people would work to acquire certain things. They'd get to certain milestones in their lives. Unfortunately, now from the very beginning, I've worked with young couples just starting off in their marriage, and what happens is they've from the very beginning gotten themselves into some trouble. I was speaking with my preacher last night, actually, and he talked to me a little bit about this. He said, is there something you can do to help us with some of the young couples at church, because they're getting off to a very bad start? And I said, I'd love to. That's exactly why I'm doing this right here. That's why I do, with my time, what it is that I do in helping people to make sure that they can make that escape.
When you're talking about Envision, this E in the ESCAPE plan, Envision, you're talking about a visualization of something. A lot of pro athletes do this where, you can't see yourself winning the Super Bowl or throwing the touchdown pass or catching the touchdown pass unless you can visualize yourself doing it. Is it that power of kind of positive thinking, that power of personal emboldenment? Is that what you're talking about?
It really is. It's very similar to that, because I look at it as we are in a race. Now, we're not necessarily saying we have to win this race, we have to finish. It's more like a marathon. Rather than saying, okay, I got to the finish line before everybody else did, which really society is kind of leading us to believe that it's that type of a race. As long as I have more money than you do, more money than my friends, if I have more stuff, that's what really gets us, is as long as I have a nicer car. Or maybe it's not even a nicer car, but it's a newer car. And we get caught up in all of this, that they're having us envision a life of luxury. They never tell us about the underside of things, the side where now you're going to have to work and be away from your family and do things that won't let you really do what it is you want to do. You're doing what you have to do just to keep up.
You're talking about winning a race that is a race against yourself, basically. What is important to you, what you value the most, what you care about the most, what makes you happiest in life.
That's right. And in this overall race, just like you said with the athletes, we've got to visualize it. When you see interviews of athletes, a lot of times they'll say, how could you deal with this type of pressure? I mean, you're in the Super Bowl. All of this attention is on you. How could you possibly do it? And they say, hey, I've done this 1,000,000 times. Just didn't do it in reality, but I did it up here in my mind. And because I'd done it in my mind, I was prepared when the opportunity presents itself. People talk about being lucky. Well, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. You've got to make sure you're prepared for this. Sometimes you can't prepare yourself for the actual life situation, but you can prepare yourself up here. Now you're ready to take advantage of that opportunity once it presents itself.
I know you've laid out a couple of strategies, and we're going to kind of throughout this interview go back and forth between some of these strategies. When we come back, I want to ask you about a couple of these first strategies that you've laid out for the E in your ESCAPE plan.
Sounds great.
Strategy 1. Determine where you want to go.
One of the hardest things for many people to figure out is exactly what it is that they want for their lives. It's been said, if you don't know where you're going, chances are you won't get there. This is definitely the case for most people. The question that you must ask yourself is this: what do you want to do with your life? The sad reality is that most people never take the time to sit down and think out exactly what it is that they want. They find themselves unhappy but don't have the slightest clue as to what it is that will make them happy. To figure this out for yourself, you've got to do something that most people either aren't willing to do or simply don't know how to do, and that is think. This is the first strategy, but it's also perhaps the most difficult. I don't want to overwhelm you right from the start, but I do want you to challenge yourself to determine exactly where it is that you want to go. Don't worry, we'll give you some exercises to show you how to make the determination, but the hard work is up to you. The greatest part of all of this is that no matter what it is that you want, we can show you how to get it. The key, however, is that you must determine where you want to go.
Strategy 2. Create your dreams list.
One of the most important strategies for you to begin with is to create a dreams list. This may sound silly to some people, but you will see how powerful this strategy can be as we move forward. To begin, you need to find a quiet spot where you can relax and not be interrupted. Now for this exercise, at the top of a pad of paper, write the following: if I had unlimited time, money, talent, and support from my family, here's what I'd do with my life. Now relax and let your imagination flow. Let the ideas pour out. Your ideas and dreams may come slowly at first, but as your imagination takes over, you may have trouble writing fast enough to keep up with the flow. Don't let your sense of reason interfere and tell you that you can't do something. Remember, this is your dreams list. What you write on your list will inspire you, motivate you, and excite you. These dreams may make you laugh or realize things about yourself that you never allowed yourself to think about. But most importantly, this list will define desires and dreams that may have been held back by the complexities of everyday life. So write it down, no matter how silly it seems, no matter what the cost or resource requirements. This is your dreams list, so let it flow and dream big.
Strategy 3. Create your values list.
The next strategy is to create a values list. Now, your values are simply the ideas and beliefs that you have about the relative importance of the things in your life. If you value security highly, choosing to leave your job and start your own business might be a cause of a great deal of stress. On the other hand, if you value wealth above security, staying in a safe, secure job at an average wage would be a frustrating experience. If you value security and wealth equally, you'll experience what's known as the frustration of values conflict, worrying that any decision you make might be the wrong one. It's important to realize that the emotions are all mental and have nothing to do with what is the right or the wrong decision. This is why it's so important to identify our values before our specific goals are set. Acting according to your values brings you a feeling of emotional balance, security, and pleasure. Acting against your values brings fear, guilt, frustration, and emotional imbalance. The good news is that you can eliminate those negative feelings. You have two choices basically. You can either change your actions to support your values or change your values to support your actions. In order to determine if your actions and your values are working together or in conflict, list your values. List those things in your life that are the most important to you, like your faith, family, friendships, charity, health, travel, career, home, free time, peace of mind, even respect or wealth and fame. Making a list of your values can help you focus on accomplishing what's most important.
All right, let's start with the first of these three strategies that we've just looked at here, determining where you want to go. This almost sounds like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Which I haven't decided what I want to be yet, JJ. So, I mean, how does someone kind of hunker down? And plus, those things may change over the course of your lifetime. So where do you begin with that process?
Well, really, it's exactly what we say. Determine where you want to go. What type of life do you want? I mean, so many people, they're living the life that they had to live. They never really focused on where it is that they want to go. As such, they're not there. You know, we talk about this a lot of times where people will say, it's just every decision's so difficult. Well, you know, I heard somebody say years ago, if you know where you're going, the answer to every question is quite simple. Because all you have to ask yourself is, does this action, does this activity take me closer to where it is that I want to go? If the answer is yes, then we do it. If the answer is no, we don't do it. Now, that may be rather simplistic and sound a little too easy, but that's what we want to do, is to make this as easy as possible. The problem is most people they don't really even know where it is they want to go. Mm-hmm. So we've got to make sure that you sit down and take time to think about it. Most people don't do that. They don't think about it because they say, what's the point in thinking about it? They've become jaded with their lives because they realize, well, yeah, when I was a kid, I wanted to do this. My parents told me, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. You're not fast enough. You're not tall enough. You're just not able to do that. The problem is they believed it. Well, if we realize that we can basically fulfill what's been taught to us, why don't we teach ourselves some new things? Why don't we reprogram our minds? But you've got to determine where it is you want to go. When I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, I knew if I want to become a lawyer, here are the steps that I've got to take. First of all, I've got to go to college. Then I've got to get a degree, graduate from college. Then I go to law school. But that's not enough. Once you graduate from law school, you then have to pass the bar exam. Well, the great thing was I knew where I was going, so it was very simple to map out a process of how to get there. The very first step was I had to make the decision, where was it that I wanted to go?
Now, when you have setbacks in determining where you want to go like this, I mean, does that just, you need to incorporate that into the thought process, or do you maybe balance a little reality check in there with the fact that, you know, maybe I can't be a lawyer, maybe I can't afford to go to law school, maybe it's so late in life for me that, you know, it would not be a good use of my time to go back to law school. I mean, just kind of maybe help me work through that potential dilemma.
Well, and that's where we've got to sit down and think about it. Because I mean, you mentioned maybe it's too late in life. I love the success stories about, you know, Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders, I believe, was in his 60s when he started Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know, he'd had an entire different career. I've worked with clients. One of my clients was in their 60s, and they started a cinnamon bun business. I thought, hey, this is great because, you know, he'd done something completely different. Now, all of a sudden, he started a new cinnamon bun business, and he was making more money than he'd ever made. He never dreamed that that's what he was going to do. However, when he sat down and took the time to say, you know, What do I want to do? I know I'm not happy doing what it is that I've been doing for the last several years. Well, if I could do anything, what would I do? What would that life look like? And by sitting down, taking the time, sometimes people will take what they call a sabbatical. Well, I might call it a vacation. I might call it an extended weekend, that I just take time, rather than getting caught up in all the day-to-day things, take some time, sit down and truly think. Because the key is, we can do anything we want to do. Problem is, people just don't know what they want to do.
For some people, though, maybe they don't have the self-discipline to do this. Maybe they just need the kick in the pants. I mean, is there a way? I mean, do you ask a friend? Do you hire someone? If you're a busy person, maybe you know that the only way that you're going to force yourself to do this is to either pay for it or have someone else help you do it. I mean, maybe you can't do it yourself. Do you see that a lot?
Absolutely, and that's really why we've put this overall program together, is to give people the steps that they can go through. These are steps that, I'd love to say that, hey, I came up with these, I created these. No, these are things that I've studied, not just in my own life, but in the lives of my clients. Basically, in working with my clients, I had some clients that were extraordinarily successful. I mean, they accomplished nearly everything they set their mind to accomplishing. What was it about them? What I found was they weren't necessarily smarter. They didn't necessarily come from the proper family background. They weren't the best looking. Well, that's what society teaches us, is that you've got to be smart, you've got to be good looking, you've got to have a ton of money. Well, we all started essentially the same way. Now, we may have been born into different situations, but you know what? We all have the same opportunities if we'll simply take the time to learn how to get there. The information that we provide teaches you how to do it, but the first step is you got to get right up here. Because if you've got barriers that are keeping you from doing that, you're never going to get there. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So you've got to do that. Part of it are the strategies we just talked about. You've got to create a dreams list. You've got to create a values list. You've got to make sure that now you know how you're going to go about accomplishing this. But first of all, what do you want to accomplish?
So, I mean, answer that question for me, though. I mean, how is it just different for every person? I mean, say I'm not the type of person that can sit down and make myself do this. I'm too busy with my day-to-day activities. So how do I accomplish? I mean, how do I even take the first step?
First of all, you've got to decide to take the first step. See, people talk about, I would love to be there. Well, the way I look at it is basically, I heard this many years ago, it's really a concept of pleasure and pain. You know, you've heard people that say, I'd give anything to be able to play the piano like that concert pianist. No, you wouldn't. If you really would, you'd do what it takes to sit down and spend the hours that they spent. They see the end result, they didn't see the early on. You've got to ask yourself, the pleasure and pain basically goes like this. Is the pleasure of actually accomplishing this worth going through the work? Or is the pain of not having accomplished this strong enough for me to actually do the work? Something's got to push you towards doing it. When you sit down and think about it, where do I want to go? Sometimes I've had people that say, well, I'd love to have six-pack abs. But then when you really look at it, you say, would I make any more money if I had six-pack abs? Would my wife love me anymore if I had six-pack abs? Would my kids love me anymore? Am I going to get further ahead in my profession? At my age and at my point in my career? Probably not. Okay, so the pleasure doesn't do it. Was the pain of being the size that I am right now cause me to go out there and take the action? Not necessarily, hence the reason I don't have six-pack abs.
Yeah.
But you look at it's the same thing with, would I like to make more money? Would I like to be a billionaire? What is it that I want to do? Well, you've got to look at this and then decide, is this worth it to you? Well, chances are people wouldn't be watching this right now if they loved where they are. If they want to do something different, they've got to do something different.
Yeah, you better stick with the two-pack abs there. Let's talk about this dreams list. You know, putting everything down that you dream about. Maybe that's outside of my comfort zone to write all those things down. Maybe I'm not sure if I want that on a piece of paper somewhere where somebody might see it or I might have to share it. How do I get past that discomfort of really opening myself up and putting something that bold down on a piece of paper?
You know, Albert Einstein referred to the definition of insanity as continuing to do the same thing the same way over and over again and expecting different results. That's exactly what we do with our lives. What happens is people say, well, I'm just going to keep doing things and I'm going to expect it to get better. It doesn't get better. What happens is you've got to make it get better. The greatest thing about this is that we can do that. Some people think it's silly to sit down and list out dreams. And I'm heartbroken sometimes when I talk to people and I say, why won't you do this? And when we kind of delve into things, they'll say, well, because I did this when I was a child. And my parents came in and told me how stupid it was. My parents told me what's the point in doing that? You're not born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You're destined to be at this particular place or in this particular position. That's the biggest load of malarkey. Unfortunately, they believed it. Well, it's the same way. If we can overcome maybe some of those things that we learned the wrong way before, now learn things the right way. That's what creating a dreams list is all about. Most people don't do that because they think that's outside of the realm of possibility for me. That's why they're called dreams. Where do you want to be? Let's dream about it, but the great thing is that if we follow the process, these dreams can become reality. We've simply got to take the time to learn how to go about doing it.
Well, JJ, you mentioned that sometimes people don't write down their dreams, don't want to write down their dreams because they've been told maybe when they were younger that they couldn't do what they maybe dreamed about doing. But what are some other reasons why some people don't do this?
You know, when we talked about the strategy, we said, here's how I want you to start. If I had unlimited time, resources, talent, money, and the support of others, what would I most want to accomplish? See, most people, when they sit down to write their goals for the year, they think, well, I couldn't really do that, so I don't want to fail. As such, I won't put down that goal. Why not? We prefaced the whole thing, if I had unlimited time, resources, money, talent, the support of my family. See, sometimes people say, well, my family would never support me on that. Let me dismiss that. That's not what your dreams are about. That's being too practical, too pragmatic. We want to sit down and say, no, let's presume that it's all out there. You've got the entire world to choose from, which we do, by the way. What do you want? If you can tell me what you want, I can tell you how to get it. That's the greatest part about this. But you got to do the hard work right there and just tell me what you want. Now we'll talk about how to get it.
Every dream that I've got, big dreams, little dreams, everything in between, how long should this list be? Can this list be?
Well, you know, it's funny. You know, one of my mentors said his initial dream list was 185 dreams. And after working 25 years, he had accomplished about 178 of those dreams. You know, now he's added more, taken away some. Same thing for myself. Basically, I'll continue to add new dreams. Sometimes I may set something, for instance, years ago I said, I want to run a marathon. And I thought, well, how am I going to run a marathon? I don't have the time to train. I mean, I'm working too hard. I've got all this going on. I can barely run 3 miles right now. Well, I've since run 8 marathons as of today, you know, and I'm looking to run at least one more a year probably, as long as I can do that. Well, all of a sudden now it becomes not only a possibility, but it's a probability that I'll be able to accomplish that because now I've done it. But at the time it seemed like you'll never be able to do that. You don't have the proper background, you don't have the proper training, but you know what? I did it because I set my mind to it. It's the same way. Sometimes people may say, big deal, a marathon. Well, you know what? Same thing when I said I want to achieve a $1 million net worth. Well, that seemed outrageous, crazy. How on earth are you going to do that? You got no money. Well, it's a lot easier. The hardest part was determining where it was that I wanted to go. That's the same way. These dreams, now we've got to be, when I look at it, my dream is to be 7 feet tall. That's not going to happen. But if it's to accomplish something, I could probably accomplish that if I take the time to learn how to go about doing it. Put it as a dream. My dream is to play in the NBA National Basketball Association in a game. That's probably not going to happen. However, you never know. It could be something, if you got enough money, you could probably pay one of the teams to let you play in a game.
Well, I don't know about that, but you may also, maybe you'll get drafted in the old man league there.
There you go.
Let's talk about values and establishing this values list. What are some values? I mean, maybe I'm not the best communicator or the best thinker in terms of understanding what my own values are. So how do I determine what my values are?
Well, values are those things, those ideas and beliefs that you believe are most important. It's things such as, I believe it's important to spend time with my family. Okay, well, if you truly believe that, why are you at the office all the time? If that's what's important to you, don't get a job that's going to require you to be away all the time. Now, you've got to kind of make sure that everything's in balance. What's more important to you? I've got people that will come to me and they say, wow, I'd love to make a lot more money. But then they're not willing to put in the effort to make that additional money. Okay, well then you've got to look for a different source. Doesn't mean that you can't make more money just because you want to be at home. You can still do that, but that will determine how you go about achieving that particular objective. You've got to take a look at what are your values. Well, my value is I don't want to take any risk. Well, we all take risks. Doing everything that you do right now is a risk. People will tell me, I can't imagine how much risk you take by having your own business. I say, risk? You want to talk to me about risk? Risk is going to work every day and being at the whim of your boss, whether or not he likes you, whether or not they're going to lay people off. That's a bigger risk that I'm not willing to take. That's why I have my own business. But you've got to look at what are the values to you. I've got a lot of responsibility with a business. Whereas sometimes, and I'm not to say people that don't have a job or that do have a job don't have a lot of responsibility, but it's a different type of responsibility. What's important to me may not be important to you. You've got to realize and sit down and make a listing, and we've got materials to help you do that.
How difficult is it for someone to define what their values are? Do most people know what their values are already? Are they that self-assured? Or do you find in the clients that you work with that they really haven't thought much about that and they haven't thought through that?
And that's definitely what I find, is that people haven't really thought it out a whole lot, because most people are so focused on just one thing that they forget about the other things. That's why in the resource materials, we've basically listed out 25 different values. So these are some examples of some values. These are things that you can take a look at and say, okay, is this important to me? For some people, achieving fame, they don't want it. They wouldn't have anything to do with it. Some people, they'd rather be famous than they would be wealthy. Well, you look at that, that's a value to them. That's what's important. Well, if you know that's what's important, now you gear your dreams towards accomplishing and being basically in balance with those values.
JJ, I know we've got some more strategies that we're going to talk about as we envision our wealth, so let's get to those.
Strategy 4. Identify and enlist your team members.
No matter what it is that you set out to accomplish, it's always easier when you have the assistance of team members. Now, when I say team members, it sounds like a broad and rather vague concept. For many of you, it'll be just one or two people. For others of you, you may have several members on your team. Your team will consist of those whose lives and actions most affect you. Team members may be a spouse or significant other, children or parents, even business partners or co-investors. Sit down and write a list of your team members. Then sit down with them and have them do the same exercises that you did in our previous strategies. First, ask them to complete a dreams list. Give them a quiet space to do it and direct them, but don't coach or make suggestions, and don't show them your dreams list. Next, have them create a values list. Again, you can direct them, but don't influence their list with your own dreams or your own values. You want this list to be as honest a representation of their dreams and their values as possible, not a list of what they think you want to hear. By taking the time to talk about your dreams and values, you'll find it easier to focus on what's most important in your life and the lives of those you care about most.
Strategy 5. Conduct a team meeting.
Once you've established who your team members are and had them complete their dreams list, sit down with them and talk about it. You may find that you share some of the same dreams. You may also be surprised and hopefully pleased by some of the dreams your team members have. This is an important discovery lesson for everyone. You're there to support each other, and by knowing each other's deepest life dreams, you can better work together to help make these dreams a reality. Once you've had a chance to discuss your dreams, do the same thing with the values list. Remember that values are the ideas and beliefs that one holds about the relative importance of things in life. Values, more so than the dreams, could trigger some heated discussion among your team members, so be prepared to act as somewhat of a moderator. It will also give you a valuable insight into the psyche of your team members and could really be beneficial for all of you in working with each other to achieve the success you most want to accomplish.
Strategy 6. Set aside a focus session for your dreams and values.
People truly are happiest when spending valuable time on the relationships, projects, experiences, and objectives that they value most. Knowing which dreams and values are the most important to you will help you make certain that you focus on the right dreams and the right values for helping you to be the happiest. This will help you become much more successful. But how do you do this? First, find a spot where you can focus with your dreams and values lists in front of you. I suggest you take a pen or pencil and prioritize your list from the most important to least important value, and then the most important to least important dream. You may have some that are equally important to you, and you may change your minds as you sit and think things through. That's fine. I want you to prioritize your values list first. By doing this, it will help you in prioritizing your dreams list. The dreams that best fit your most important values will be the ones that bring you the greatest satisfaction. The most satisfaction will equate to the greatest true success. Next, have your team members do the same with their list. Have each person keep their list and review them periodically. Since dreams and values change as life changes, you may find your priorities or even entire dreams and values will change in priority or perhaps even change completely throughout time.
All right, you mentioned that team members, JJ. It kind of sounds like a vague concept. It does sound like a vague concept to me. So, I mean, who are some people maybe on your team, or give me some examples of the type of team members that I should try to assemble in following this plan?
Well, you got to realize I've been doing this for a long time now, so I've got probably a larger team than most people watching this right now are really going to have. And the reason is that I've got accountants, I've got other attorneys that I work with, I've got business managers, I've got IT people, I've got internet people, I've got all kinds of marketing people. I've got a lot of different members that are on my team. Now, not all of those team members from a business standpoint will be on what I mean here when I'm talking about enlisting the aid of team members. Bottom line, everybody's got a support network, whether it be some friends that you have, whether it's family members, whether it's your children, maybe your parents. You've got to think about this overall team as these are the people that most matter to you in life. For instance, my wife is a key core member of my overall team. It'd be very difficult for me to say, you know what, I've realized that one of my key goals is to climb Mount Everest, for instance. Well, you know what, Mount Everest is about a 60 to 70 day overall expedition. When you look at that, I've got to have her support if I want to climb Mount Everest, because that means I'm going to have to be out of town for quite a while. Not only that, it's about $65,000 for one of the guide services. Well, when you look at that, I'm going to have a little support to make sure that she's with me on this. Well, it doesn't mean that she was completely against it if I broach the subject right now. Right now, I've got children at home. She may say, I'm going to need some help here, not only from a financial standpoint, but also just from a time commitment standpoint in helping me to take care of the kids. Well, when you can sit down and work with your team members, first of all, you've got to identify who they are. Obviously, my wife is one of these. My children are also part of my inner circle, I guess you'd say, team members. My accountant's one of my inner circle team members. And then I've also got a business partner that's one of my key inner circle team members. For many people watching this right now, their key inner circle may be their wife, maybe their husband, maybe their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their significant other. Bottom line, you've got to make sure that the people that will be really a part of your day-to-day life, those are your team members.
So you're just talking about defining these team members. You put them down on a piece of paper. You're not talking about necessarily having a team meeting. You're not talking about the folks in my personal life, the folks in my business life. Maybe that's two different teams.
Right.
But cumulatively, they're all part of your team or your network. That's what you're talking about.
That's right. And what you want to do are those people whose lives were going to be affected and impacted, that work most closely with you. Those are what I mean here when I talk about team members.
Well, can these team members change? I mean, how often do you kind of revisit team members and establishing what your team is? Do you have to wait for some sort of, cataclysmic event to happen in your life? Is this an annual kind of review process you do? Do you do it more frequently than that?
I like to do it on an annual basis, but especially as you're starting out. As you're starting out, it's somewhat finite, where you say, okay, here's as I can measure this. As things progress, you'll grow your team. Some team members may no longer be team members, but you've got to look at it on an annual basis. The key is make sure that the people that are impacting your life the most are on board with the overall objective. When you look at a team concept in sports, it's not about every man out for himself. It's about, as a team, working as a cohesive unit, we're all working together towards achieving our goals. It's the same thing here.
I could look at this in some ways and say this is a little bit selfish. This is my team members right here. Perhaps if my wife is one of my team members and we don't share the same goals for me, she's got a different set of team members, or she's got a different set of team members to achieve the goals that she wants. How do you how do you blend that when there's not unity on the team?
And that's where your values come into play. You know, for many people, selfishness is what it's all about. For other people, they value making sure that everybody gets along. You've got to sit down and say, okay, what's my most important value? If my most important value in the world is to make sure that everybody gets along, I've got to realize if that's most important to me, then I've now, by definition, said that everything else falls underneath that. Well, what we've got to do is make sure that you've demonstrated a commitment, I guess, to keeping with your values. That's what's going to make you happiest. Now, if you write down that the key value in my life is to keep everybody happy, but you find out you're miserable, then what you're telling yourself is that's not your core value in life. So you've got to work all of these strategies in together. Now, there's a method to our madness. A lot of times people say, why am I spending so much time on these dreams? Why am I focusing on these values? Because you've got to understand that you're sabotaging yourself if you don't build on a firm foundation. That's what this is all about. Setting the foundation as strong as you possibly can to make sure you can build upon that and build as high as you want to go.
Now, I know you're talking about ranking things in terms of priority, but do you ever abandon a dream? Do you ever abandon a value?
Well, what you've got, I wouldn't say that we abandon values. You may abandon a dream because it's not in alignment with your values. Because what you may find is your values may change because you may say, I want to spend time with my family while they're growing up. And what I mean by that is maybe you have children at home. You say, okay, it's important to me to make sure that my children know me and get to spend time with me. Once they're off, moved out of the house, that may not be as strong of a item of importance for you. Well, now your dreams will change to kind of go with that. Or maybe that dream you had was kind of priority, kind of a lower priority. Because you look at it and you say, that was very important to me at the time, or maybe I'll put that one on the back burner. That's where the prioritization comes into play.
Well, let me ask the question this way. Can someone else's dreams or values prohibit you from achieving your dreams and accomplishing your values?
I think it certainly can if you let it. And that's one of the things where, we talked about one of the strategies is to conduct a team meeting. Now, at my office, there are times that people say, I don't want to have to go to another meeting. I hate meetings. I'll work with clients and they say, I'm leaving the corporate world. Why? Because I don't want to go to any more meetings. And now all of a sudden, in trying to help them do this, I'm telling them, first step is to have a meeting. Well, the key is meetings are important. It's how you conduct those meetings that determines whether or not they're productive or whether they're just a waste of time. And your mindset also affects that. If you go into something thinking it's going to be a waste of time, I promise you it will be. However, if you go into it and say, what positive can I take away from this meeting, you'll find something positive. It's all a matter of what you think about. Well, when we look at this right here, conducting a team meeting, if you go into a situation with your team members and say, you know what, I want to make sure that I'm able to accomplish my objectives. Make sure that theirs are in alignment with yours. They may be polar opposites. Well, we've got to find some middle ground, or we've at least got to talk things through. That's where the importance of conducting a team meeting is so valuable. You've got to make sure that you do it, because if you've got other people that are working against you, it's going to be that much more difficult. But if you're working together, everything can be accomplished.
Well, the other thing that you said in one of these strategies is that you prioritize these values and you develop this values list before you develop the dreams list. Why is that?
Well, partly, as I mentioned earlier, where we say, for instance, your values list. If my values list is, I want to spend time with my family. Okay, well, going off on a 2-month, 3-month, 4-month worldwide trip without my family violates that value. I'm going to feel guilty about it because I'm going to say, the most important thing to me is being able to spend time with my family. If that's truly my most important value, then I'm not going to enjoy my trip because I'm going to miss my family. That's where you've got to look at it. And when you're prioritizing those dreams, having that month-long vacation may be something that I say, this is my goal, that I will achieve this goal, this dream, once my kids go off to college. once my kids move out of the house. That way, then from a prioritization standpoint, you've been able to say, now I'm in complete alignment and I've got the best overall plan available. That's kind of the example that I use a lot of times, because sometimes people will say, this is very important to me. And I say, if it really is that important to you, your actions would demonstrate how important that is to you. You've got to make that decision. You've got to be honest with yourself. And that's why we say be honest. Don't just say, this sounds like a good one. You know, having a good relationship with my wife, that sounds like the right answer. Let me put that down. Be honest. Is that something that's of primary importance to you? If so, you'll have to make concessions to get along with your wife, to get along with your husband. You've got to understand what is the most important thing to you. If you're honest, you'll see that by focusing on what's most important to you, that's when your life's going to be the happiest.
All right, you mentioned focus session, JJ. I mean, what are we going to sit around? Are we going to burn some incense? Are we going to meditate? Are we going to cross our legs Indian style on the floor? What does this focus session entail?
I tell you, if that's what it takes for you to be able to focus, then burn that incense. I mean, play those ocean waves in the background, whatever it is that it takes for you. Bottom line is, you've got to set aside a time, because if you don't, life happens. I mean, life has a way of basically, you will not be able to find the time if you don't specifically make the time. I found that in my life, that I've said, I'd really like to exercise more. And then at the end of the day, I say, wow, the day's over and I didn't have time to exercise. The gym's closed, or it's raining outside. I can't go run. Oh, well, I guess I won't do that. I'll have to do that tomorrow. If I had basically set aside the time to do that, it would have been accomplished. You've got to make a conscious effort to set aside that time. And when I say focus session, I mean block everything else out. You're not going to be able to do this as you're driving your kids to school, or as you're actually at work focused on another task. I want you to be able to clear your mind of everything else and focus on nothing but what it is that you want to accomplish. Focus on your dreams. Focus on your values. Make sure that you are in complete alignment with all of these things, and spend your time thinking about nothing but these important tasks.
All right, we've got some other strategies that we want to cover. I want to ask you some more questions about those after we get a chance to review.
Strategy 7. Write out a statement pledge, sign it, and carry it with you.
One of the most important steps is to put your goals in writing. Do it in such a way that it becomes a contract, a pledge with yourself to take steps daily, weekly, annually, etc., to move towards fulfilling your goals. Here's how I want you to do it. Start out by writing your goal as a statement. I will accomplish blank. Next, tell yourself how this will help you. By accomplishing this, I will blank. Last, tell yourself why this will help you in your life. For instance, this is important because it will enable me to blank. Say you've always wanted to be a millionaire. Your statement pledge could start with the overall goal. I will become a millionaire by the time I am 50 years old. Then tell yourself how this will help you. By accomplishing this, I will become financially independent. Then decide why this will help you in your life. This is important to me because I will be able to provide a stable financial life for my family so that I can spend more time with them, and it will give me the money so I achieve my dreams. Finally, I want you to sign your written statement. Now, my telling you to sign it may sound a little odd, but when you sign this contract with yourself, you are promising yourself that you will work towards these goals. Keep your statement with you. Whenever you get a chance, I want you to pull this out and read it to yourself again. Continue to reinforce your goals by reminding yourself of exactly what it is that you will accomplish.
Strategy 8. Create a vision board.
One of the most important components in envisioning your desired life is to develop a clear mental image of exactly what it will look like. The easiest way to do this is by creating what I refer to as a vision board. This may sound strange to you, but it's really quite simple. Over the years, I've worked with a lot of people, and I've yet to encounter anyone who knew exactly what I meant when I first told them that I wanted them to create a vision board. However, after I explained the concept to them, they found it to be not only simple, but enormously enjoyable as well. The exercise of creating a vision board is basically just like it sounds. I want you to put together a collage of pictures that portray the way that you want your life to look. Whether you go to the store to find magazines, or if you search for images on the internet, or if you use some of the pictures that you may have taken of your own life, put together a visual image of the life that you want for yourself and see what it looks like. Create the image on your vision board and make that image burn itself into your mind.
Strategy 9. Set your course by defining your goals and focusing on the results you want.
The next step in creating your financial blueprint is establishing your goals, those specific objectives on which you've decided to invest your time, effort, energy, and money. Whereas values are mental attitudes, goals are physical objectives. To get the most benefit, your goals should reflect your most important values. There are specific parameters that make an objective a goal. To be effective in your blueprint, a goal must, 1, be specific and measurable. You must be able to define your goal in terms of dollars, numbers, or other specific terms like the size and style of a house or the exact job that you want. Second, should have a starting and finishing date. You need start and ending dates for accomplishing each goal. These target dates will help you determine where your time and energy would be best spent. Third, your goal should be put in writing. Not writing down your goals is a huge mistake. When your goals are written down, you can better plan, organize, and control the paths that will lead you to accomplishing them. Fourth, your goals should be written in terms of results and not processes. By result, I mean that it defines the way your life will be after you have accomplished your goal. The process is the steps, time, and resources it takes to get there. Focusing on the result, not the process, creates a roadmap from where you are to where you want to go. The process will take shape after your goals have been defined.
All right, JJ, let's go back to that, one of the first strategies there about writing out a statement, pledge, signing it, carrying it with you. Can you pull yours out right now? Can I see it? Is it? You may have left your wallet in the car. But what's the importance, what's the significance of signing it and carrying it around with you?
Well, as a lawyer, one of the things, I work with people all the time on contracts and different things along those lines, and it's amazing. You can sense a shift in someone's mindset when you say, I'm going to need you to sign right here. It may be something that is completely insignificant, that all I had them sign was something that says, I promise my name is John Smith. But when you make them sign it, all of a sudden it's as if they have to think about it and say, okay, I mean, I'm stuck to this. I'm bound to this once I sign it. I mean, my signature, that is my word, my bond. Let me make sure that I have firmly committed to this. It's the same thing with your written statement of your goals. I want you to sign it because your conscious mind say, oh, all it is a piece of paper. But your subconscious mind will be thinking, wait a second, I signed this. I better abide by it because this is a binding contract that I'm making with myself. I will accomplish these things. I will do it. Here's why I'll do it. Here's what I'm going to gain by accomplishing this objective. Once I sign it, it's that contract. Subconsciously, I then start working on ways, how am I going to make this happen? Because I don't want to go back on my word. That's the importance of signing it. You know, there was a Harvard study years ago, and it talked about the importance of writing down goals. And it said 83% of the graduating class, I believe it was Harvard Business School, had no actual goals. 14% of the class had actual written goals, and then 3% had written goals that were signed. Well, that 3% achieved far more than the other 97% combined. When you start looking at that and you say, maybe there's something to this. To me, I look at it very simply. I'd rather do it and it not make any difference than not doing it, and maybe it made all the difference.
Now, what about carrying it around with you? I mean, am I going to obsess on this? It's in my jacket all the time. It's in my wallet all the time. It's on my sun visor in my car. I mean, where am I carrying it? Why am I carrying it? Why is that so significant?
You know, I hope you do obsess about it. And the reason I say that, sometimes I'll tell people, put it up next to your mirror so that every morning when you wake up and brush your teeth, you look in the mirror and you say, wow, I'm reminded of that statement. Once again, your subconscious mind begins to think about it, and it goes to work even if you don't know that it's at work. It's working on ways that will come up to basically design a plan for you to accomplish these goals. And every time you think about it, you become what you think about. And if you realize that, you're thinking about this, if I tell you to do something, fact is, even if I use negative language, if I say, don't think about a black cat, well, what just came into your mind?
A black cat.
Picture of a black cat.
Yeah.
The thing is, every time you look at this statement, every time you even feel it in your pocket, all of a sudden you'll think about what's written on that. And the more you think about it, the more your mind will continue to come up with ideas on how you're going to accomplish that.
Another strategy that you've laid out there is creating this vision board, which you admitted yourself may seem silly. Some clients tell you they feel silly doing this vision board. So, I mean, I've never done a vision board before. So tell me how I go about that.
Well, it's really quite amazing. You know, when you start looking at this, people oftentimes, the only way they can picture something is to picture it, see a picture of it, because our minds all work a little differently. For some people, when I'm I'm a very visual person. I can picture something in my mind, and sometimes it's difficult to convey it, but I can see it very clearly. Well, the best way, I've done a lot of construction projects, and sometimes when working with contractors, I'll explain something to them, and they don't get it. But when I actually show them a picture, all of a sudden they say, oh, here's what you want. Now we're able to communicate so much better because their minds think a little bit differently. If I'm able to see this, now I'm able to convey it a little bit better as well. By actually having a physical, tangible picture of the life you want to create, what would it look like? You would be driving a white BMW convertible. Okay, get a picture of a white BMW convertible, put it on your vision board. Maybe you say, well, I don't like white BMW convertibles. Okay, you want a red Ferrari? Put that red Ferrari, put a picture on there, and I want you to look at that every day and remind you that this is where I'm going. This is why I'm working hard. This is why I've taken the time to focus on my dreams, my values. This is why I'm going to be focusing on accomplishing the strategies that we'll be talking about throughout the course of this overall program.
I'm thinking a beach with a fruit drink in my hand, but maybe that's just me.
Hey, we need a picture of that, I'm telling you.
Okay, so how often do you do this vision board? Because, I could tell you that my vision board would look a lot different 10 years ago when I was not married versus today when I am married.
Well, once your overall vision changes, change your vision board. Because if you look at it on a regular basis, if it's something that you say, okay, I put this thing together, I threw it in a closet, or I threw it under my bed, and I never look at it, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. If you look at it every day, and you're burning into your mind the image of this is what I'm going for, you'll be amazed at how quickly that you will get to that point. The key is you've got to be thinking about it. Most people say, but that's just a pipe dream. Put it off to the side. If you focus on it every day, your mind will put it at work, because you can't help but abiding by this universal law, you become what you think about.
All right, share a secret with me. What's on your vision board that I should know?
Well, I tell you, right now I've got a lake house on my vision board. And I even took the step of having the plans drawn up for this. I picked out the actual lot for my lake house. I actually paid an architect to draw up the plans for this lake house. I may not build it for another 5 or 10 years, but the plans have been drawn because that's where I'm going. I look at that on a regular basis. It reminds me. Sometimes I'll drive out to that lot and I just stand and I look out at the water. That's because it gets me motivated. It helps me to say, you know what, that's why you're getting on a plane and going and putting together a deal. That's why you're out here putting together another real estate deal. Because if that's what you're going for, because I picture, when I have this overall vision in my mind, I picture my kids going down and us going out on a boat, or on the jet skis, or the watercraft. You look at this, that's right here. It's going to happen.
I have strong faith in you that is what's going to happen. Let's talk about defining your goals, focusing on the results that you want. There were a couple of, steps in that process there. Being specific, being measurable. How specific? How are you going to measure some of these things?
Well, I think the more specific you are, the more likely you are to actually accomplish your goals. Because some people, they'll have just vague things to say, I want to be fit. Okay, well, what does that mean? You want to be physically fit. What does that mean? For some people, they would look at a certain position and say, hey, that's perfect. That's exactly where I'd like to be. You need to say, no, I want to lose 2 pant sizes. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to be able to run a 7-minute mile, whatever it might be. For some people, where they are right now, a 7-minute mile may sound like, wow, I'd be going backwards. For them, they may say, I want to run a 4.5-minute mile. Okay, you've got to be specific because now you have something to work toward. If it's something that's vague, ambiguous, that just kind of cloudy, you're not going to be able to visualize it. And if you can't visualize it, chances are you're not going to ever attain this. If you have something that's very measurable, now you can work towards something that you have a target.
And you even advocate going a step further, start dates, finishing dates, so that you've got this, hopefully reasonable timeline for doing some of these things. You're setting yourself up for failure with some of that too, aren't you?
You know what? I think you have to, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But here's where I challenge people, and I caution people, I guess, is to say, don't be so worried about your start date that you say, well, and I used to do this. So that's why I can tell you it comes from experience. I used to say, okay, it's January 1st. Every day of the year I'm going to run. Okay, well, if I didn't run January 1st, it's almost as if I said, oh, forget it. I messed up this year. Let me wait till next January 1st. You don't have to do that. I used to do the same thing even on a shorter term basis where I'd say, all right, starting Monday, I'm going to do this. Well, if something came up Monday and I didn't do it, I'd wait till the next Monday. The best time to start is now. No matter where we are, right now is the time to make the decision to do something different. Because now the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Take that step today and make sure that you get on the road to achieving your goals, reaching your destination.
Again, you advocate putting these things in writing. Put it in writing because it makes you more committed.
That's right. Put it in writing. I tell people, handwrite it. Don't just type it. Handwrite it and watch yourself handwrite it. And then have that. Now you say, well, that's my handwriting. Now you're going to recognize it even that much more. Sign it again. Make sure that you've got these written down and then focus on it. Because if you write it down one time and you throw it in the paper, you may as well have just thrown your dream out the window. You've got to make sure that you have it written down and focus on it.
Now you advocate, that you need to do this in a results-oriented way, not a process-oriented way. So, give me an example of what you're talking about or something that will kind of highlight the difference between results-oriented versus process-oriented.
Okay, well, the result would be actually getting something finished. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I've got a $100,000 mortgage that I want to pay off. Well, if my goal is I want to have this paid off, well, when do you want to have it paid off? That's where we talk about setting the timetable. If I say I want to have this paid off in 10 years, okay? Right now, if it's a 30-year mortgage, it's going to be 30 years. How can I get it to within 10 years? First of all, establish that as your goal. Don't worry about the process right now. Determine what your goal is. And here's where I see people that they basically abandon their goals. Here's a for instance for you. They'll say, I want to pay this off, but then they start breaking it down. They say, wow, I'm going to have to put another $1,000 a month toward that mortgage. How am I going to do that? And then they start worrying so much about the process that they abandon that dream. Come up with your dream, come up with your goal, make it concrete, make it specific, then develop the process after the fact. But don't make your process, because what's going to happen is that your self-limiting beliefs will keep you from ever accomplishing it.
Now I know, and I've had this from personal experience. You set some goals, or you set out to accomplish something, and you have an end result in mind, and you get there, and yeah, you've achieved the goal, but other things happen too, good and bad. So how do you account for the unexpected when you're trying to define what it is that you want to achieve?
Well, what's funny is you've got to basically manage the process, because as you mentioned, things will happen. And your mindset is so important here. And that's why we spend an entire portion of the overall Wealth Escape plan talking about nothing but your mindset. And the reason is because, I remember growing up, my dad kind of gave me this illustration, and I'll share it with you. He took a glass of water, clear water. He held it up and he said, look, you can see perfectly, see right through it. And he said, but let me show you what happens. And he took a cup of coffee and he poured just a couple drops into that glass of water. All of a sudden, he held it up to the light. The entire thing was kind of murky. And he said, but here's what I want to show you. And then he poured it into a larger glass and he said, look how much positive you've got to pour in before it clears it all up. He said, one little drop of coffee can cloud the whole thing. But having to pour continuously, pouring more and more water before it starts getting clear. It's the same way with our thoughts. When those things happen to us, it's how we deal with it. We can't control the world around us. We can control how we react to the world around us. And that was the lesson he taught me very early on, because if we allow those negative thoughts, those negative occurrences to impact our mind, it's over. We're lost. We're gone. Key is you've got to continue. That's why I talk about reviewing this, why I have a vision board. I'm going to make sure that I'm pouring in as much positive as I possibly can, because the world's out there, it's going to pour in some negative. It's how I deal with it that makes all the difference.
All right, there's some more strategies I want to get to. Let's take a look at them, but come back and ask you some more questions.
Strategy 10. Identify and eliminate destructive values from your life.
Most values are positive, but there are destructive values that always lead to personal failure and must be changed for those who want a successful, fulfilling life. Destructive values are, number one, the desire for something for nothing. Symptoms include gambling, cheating, or even stealing. Second, the desire to feel superior to others. Symptoms include gossip, prejudice, bigotry, aloofness, criticism, and blame. Third, the desire for continuous instant pleasure. Symptoms include overspending and overindulgence in food, alcohol, or drugs. Identifying destructive values is the most important step in their elimination. Destructive values are parasitic and drain energy and resources that could be spent on the things you value most. Never put roadblocks in the way of success. Establish as one of your most important goals the elimination of any destructive values. Don't use your list to become self-critical. This list is to help you to improve your current situation, not to use to beat yourself up about how horrible you may be. The whole point of this exercise is not the list itself, but what you do next with this list. Next, you need to create a plan to eliminate these destructive values from your life. If reaching your goals is more important than these destructive values, then do what it takes to not just create it, but stick to it.
Strategy 11. Spend the majority of your time on those objectives and goals that are most important to you.
One of the greatest discoveries of philosophers over the centuries is that our lives reflect the thoughts that occupy our minds. At this point, we've already prioritized our values list and then our dreams list from most important to least important. We mentioned that we truly are happiest when we're spending our time and resources on the things and people that we value the most. Again, knowing which values are the most important to you will help you make certain that you focus your energy on achieving the goals and objectives that will give you the most satisfaction. Since we become what we think about, make a conscious effort to spend the majority of your time thinking about those values that are the most important to you. Using your values list, prioritize your goals as they match your most important to least important values. Not that you will not want to accomplish other goals, especially short-term ones or those with important deadlines, but divide your time so that you will stay happiest and most motivated. Think of your time as a pie chart where, on average, you divide up your goal-tending time by the most satisfying to the least satisfying. This can actually help you accomplish all of your goals, even those less satisfying ones, as the ones that make you happiest can keep you motivated to keep moving forward.
Strategy 12. Begin each morning and end each evening with a visualization of your goal.
It's been said that the strangest secret to achieving extraordinary levels of success is that we become what we think about. The greatest part of that is that since we can control what we think about, we can control what we become. You see, our minds work in very similar ways to computers. You may be familiar with the term GIGO, which stands for garbage in, garbage out. Our minds work the very same way. The important thing is that you must put in thoughts that will produce the type of results that you want to get out. What most people don't realize is that we really have two minds. There's our conscious mind and then our subconscious mind. While our conscious mind is only working while we are aware of it, the subconscious mind is working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It will continue to work on what we program it to focus on. For this reason, I want you to set aside a moment of time, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, to focus on what your life will look like once you accomplish all of your goals.
All right, JJ, let's go back to identifying and eliminating destructive values from your life. This is a challenge for a lot of people. I mean, and you pointed out a couple of good examples there, gambling and stealing and cheating. And, basically, I think people are good at heart, but everybody's got a shortcoming. Everybody's got deficiencies. So how do you identify and overcome the ones that are going to cause you the most problem?
Well, you really got to be honest with yourself. I mean, it's all about being truthful and focusing and saying, have I found myself looking for the quick, easy way to get to where it is that I want to go? Am I looking for a quick buck? Am I looking for a get-rich-quick scheme? And the thing, you're setting yourself up for failure. The key is we've got to follow time-tested, proven strategies. That's what this program is all about. I have people all the time that are saying, hey, if I do this, and they start getting up to conniving types of ways, and I say, you're setting yourself up for failure. I've talked to people from an asset protection standpoint that they'll talk about strategies that I say, you know what, if you want to do that, I'm not going to work with you because, first of all, it's wrong. Second, some of the things may be illegal. They may not be, but if they're just immoral, unethical, or just I don't feel comfortable doing it, I believe it's all going to come back. And what happens, remember, you become what you think about. If you're continually thinking about ways to take a shortcut that's not a legal shortcut, but try to get something for nothing, you're going to fail. It's the same thing with some of the other issues that we talked about with that particular strategy.
Give me an example of good idea gone bad from some personal experiences that you've had with yourself or with clients where you've seen this destructive behavior manifest itself.
As far as a good idea gone bad is somebody said, you know what, I would like to pay less taxes. And they came to me, they talked to me, and I said, you know what? Under Section 162 of the tax code, all ordinary necessary business expenses are deductible. I've had people say, okay, ordinary and necessary. It's ordinary and necessary for me to have a security system for my company. My dog could be my security system. Now, what I'll do is I'll deduct the expense of purchasing the dog. I'll deduct the expense of feeding the dog. I'll deduct the expense of taking care of the dog. All of a sudden, you're saying, wait a second. I tell them, you can't deduct this. You can't do that. And they say, but you said whatever's ordinary and necessary. This is ordinary and necessary for my business. Well, you may look at it that way. There's no need to push the envelope. That's an area that I see especially is in the area of taxes, where you're going to learn that there are some great ways to significantly reduce your taxes. But the key is there's nothing creative about coming up with immoral ways, unethical ways, illegal ways in many instances to reduce your taxes. There are too many legal ways. Don't spend your time, effort, energy focused on ways to do it the wrong way.
I'm not talking about the obvious ones, the ones that are going to send you to jail, send you to prison. I'm talking about the little things, the little bitty bending the rules here, bending the rules there. I mean, I see it in a lot of people that I come in contact with. I have the opportunity to go that direction in my own business at times and choose not to. It's about self-discipline. And so someone watching this who doesn't necessarily think they can stay behind that line or step behind that line, how do they overcome that?
Well, that's a lot of what we do when we work with people is that we make sure that we can set them on a program, just like an exercise program. Sometimes people, when left to their own devices, they're not going to succeed. They've demonstrated that time and time again, so they need a trainer, maybe a fitness specialist that can help them put them on a path. That's what we do from the standpoint of a financial overall plan. Well, it's the same thing here. One of the little things that I see people doing is, we talked about one of the destructive values of trying to place yourself above other people. A lot of that comes in with gossiping. Why do people gossip? Because they want to tear people down. Because somehow it makes them feel better about themselves if they can say something negative about other people. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to get caught up in. And what happens is, it's easy, even if we don't do the gossiping, just to listen and find out. One of the things I try to teach my daughters is don't even be a part of that. It's easy to get caught up in it, but just stay out of it. If somebody's talking about something, if somebody's making fun of somebody else, don't laugh. That just kind of eggs on the other person. And then if we can really focus on that, I've seen people that will even make excuses of, well, I could make that money too if I didn't care about blank. If I could care less about spending time with my family, or if I could care less about how I did it, if I could care less about other people, if I wanted to rob, steal, cheat. Well, no, that's their excuse. The way I look at it, you can make money or you can make excuses, but you can't make both.
You also advocate spending a majority of your time on the major objectives, on the things that are the most important. Now, if I've got this dreams list and I've got this values list, and I may have, like you said earlier, 185 different items on here. So how do I pick the ones that are the most important, and what happens to the ones that I may put a lower priority to? How do you get around to doing all of it?
Well, the great part of this is that if you're continually thinking about these things on an ongoing basis, you'll formulate which ones are the most important to you. I mean, on a day-to-day basis. We basically operate our lives. We've got a list of things that we need to work on. Our values have told us which ones are the most important. For some of us, what's most important is putting those things off, because our free time is what we're most concerned with. That's what we value the most. We've got to be honest and say, okay, if free time is what you value the most, you're not going to be disciplined, then don't tell me that you really want to accomplish that. And that's hard for many people to hear. I've worked with people. I'll give you an example. I was working with a couple, and they told me that more than anything, they wanted to get their finances in check. Well, they were in a lease on a vehicle. This vehicle cost $900 a month. They were upside down, but they told me that more than anything, they wanted to make sure that they could get everything in check and be on a financial road where they could take care of themselves. Well, I set out a plan for them. I came back. I looked in the driveway. First thing I saw was that vehicle. I said, wait a second. I thought we understood that you wanted to get on this plan. Part of that plan is to get rid of this vehicle. They said, well, but I've got an image that I've got to maintain. I've got to make sure that I portray this certain type of image to everybody. I said, tell you what, how's that image going to be working out for you when you're in bankruptcy? That's the image that you're going to end up portraying if you can't change what it is you thought was important. For them, what they thought was important was portraying this image of affluence. It's what's sometimes referred to as affluenza. People suffer from the flu here, but affluenza, in that they're so worried about making sure that they've got all of the things that they think are important. And it turns out what's happening is that they're destroying themselves. But you've got to make sure that you have your values in alignment with these goals. Some of your goals, some of your dreams may be accomplished down the road. Some of these are going to be more short-term dreams that you can accomplish right now. The more time you spend with these, the better familiar you'll be with them, and that way you're able to actually prioritize and get those dreams to happening.
Beginning each morning, ending each day with this visualization of what it is that you want to achieve. This is really, is this the power of positive thinking, or is this the power of realistic thinking? You understand the difference?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, when you start talking about the power of positive thinking, sometimes I think people say, yeah, that's a bunch of rah-rah hoopla, it doesn't do any good because life's still going to happen. Realistic thinking is realizing that, you know what, there is a law of the universe. This has been studied, that we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. Being realistic, if we realize that scientists have discovered this, philosophers have discovered this, we become what we think about. We've got our subconscious mind that is working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, till it cannot basically distinguish between truth and false. It can't do it. If we tell our subconscious mind we will become a millionaire, it goes to work and starts working on formulating plans on how we'll become a millionaire. Now, our conscious mind may say, yeah, that's great, but guess what? Visa's calling, MasterCard's calling, American Express is calling, Discover's calling. All of these credit cards, how's that going to happen? Well, if we let our subconscious mind start hearing that, it's going to start thinking, okay, we can't do it. The very first thing I want people to think about, this is going to be a great day. This is what I'm going to do to accomplish my objectives. This is why it's important. At night, you know what? I need to think about these things again, because the more we think about it, the more our subconscious mind gets to work and can put that plan into action.
All right, so I miss a day. I forget one morning when I wake up to think about it. I forget one night before I go to bed to think about it because I've got something else. Am I lost?
You know, unfortunately, that's what people think sometimes. They think, okay, I missed one time, I guess, you know, throw the whole thing out, forget it. Well, it's just like running, just like lifting weights, just like doing everything else. Do it, get on a path. If you forgot to do it right now. You know, I've had people that will say, well, I'm too busy to do that. I say, you're too busy not to do that. You've got to make sure that you take the time out of your schedule. If you forgot to do it last night, fine. Start again doing it this morning. If you forgot to do it this morning, do it right now. Do what it takes to make things happen. If you truly want to change, you can make that change. The key is you've got to take action.
Envisioning making a difference, envisioning your future wealth, your current wealth. This is good stuff. Thanks, JJ.
Thank you.